Going to be fun.
It's going to be good.
All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another episode of Reactionary Opinions. This evening, it's myself and Mr. Patriarch. We are going to be discussing something very, very interesting. You know, this channel's name is Reactionary Opinions, you know, and a lot of the channel's name gets lost on our viewers. Maybe you don't quite understand what it means to be reactionary or to have reactionary thought or to think in a reactionary way. Maybe you just didn't know and understand the title or the name of our channel. We've kind of drifted on this channel for obvious reasons because of, you know, the lockdown and our struggle and infuriation with the government. But I think it's important for us to sort of regroup and talk a little bit more about what the channel is actually about. We more so talk about philosophy, political philosophy, all of these sort of things, more so through a Christian lens than anything else. So, I mean, for example, if you had to go and look through some of our previous videos that we've made in the past, we made some greats like libertarianism is Satanism, make patriarchy great again, fascism, unpacking the F word, not as bad as you might think. We also made some classics like lose with liberalism or nationalism, use that word. There's also ones that say that one that we make called the failure of democracy. Also ones that says the other one called that's a conspiracy theory. So we've done a whole bunch of actual reactionary videos and reactionary material and stuff. So I thought it would be nice to talk about these ideas this evening. So why don't we, I think what we should start with, Dylan, why don't you just sort of give the viewers what your idea of what you think reactionary thought actually is?
Yeah, of course. So so first off, the term reactionary, I think, was originally kind of a slur word used by the left for anyone who wasn't with it or on with the program. They were labeled as reactionary. But it's kind of become like it's sort of one of these words that has over time slowly been adopted by the people who it was targeted or by the people who were targeted by it, and just like, yeah, okay, whatever, I'm reactionary. So and we can think of other words like this, like, you know, the N word with the A on the end of it in like America or something like that, where it's used as a term of derision, and then the people who are receiving it like, yeah, okay, whatever, like that's who I am. I'm a reactionary.
So basically the reactionaries owned the word reactionary, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. So it's becoming like it's particularly in about the past 10 years or so, people are beginning to sort of embrace it. And there's kind of in the right, which I have conceived of for some time as basically being anything that's anti-left, which is basically anything that is anti-egalitarian and accepting of hierarchy, and thus against the left, because the left is all about equality and power without responsibility. The right is kind of divided into what could be thought of as two separate entities. So you have conservatives, and then you have reactionaries. And this is applicable to America specifically, and like the West more broadly. So conservatives are like traditional American values, the Constitution, limited government, low taxes, states' rights, things like that, right? So your typical boilerplate conservative talking points. But the reactionary goes a little step further than that and says maybe the system as it exists is stacked against us. Conservatism is conserve nothing. All it's managed to conserve is money in the Heritage Foundation's bank accounts, and Fox News is able to get a lot of viewers and whatnot, and that's good for them. And conservative ink has spilled much ink on this matter and raped in a lot of money besides. And it exists for the purposes of handing out jobs and brushing elbows with polite society and so forth. So Reactionary sees the conservative movement as a failure, basically, and that whereas the conservative might be like, okay, we just need to get people to buy in the Constitution again. A reactionary might say, look, the Constitution has failed, for example, or it might have worked upon a time, but we live in such a degraded society, which has been infiltrated at every level by disgusting leftists, that the system, which once served a religious and largely moral population, is now entirely unfit for purpose. So that's sort of the difference.
Yeah. So I think what we will get into is we will get into conservatism and what makes something inherently conservative. We will sort of talk about Dylan's friend Mencius Moldbug and some of his far out, some would say crazy ideas, old Curtis Yarvin. And then we'll sort of discuss what our ideas are for what makes our thinking explicitly reactionary. So Dylan, back to conservative ink. Okay, now this is something that is so blatant nowadays. In my mind, I believe that, and this is what Mencius Moldbug did, is he has this theory of the cathedral now. So basically, his idea behind the cathedral is that the universities, the media, the press, all of these people, they control the narrative, and the narrative is the cathedral, all sort of based on, in the past, in sort of the medieval, it was the Catholic Church that controlled the narrative. So today, the media and everything, they are now the new sort of cathedral. And that's his sort of analogy of the world that's going on. It's not like, it's really not as if Alex Jones would disagree with us, but it's not like guys sort of meet in a smoky room behind dark curtains in a basement somewhere and have these meetings and stuff, although there might be a little bit of that shadiness going on. But there's a sort of a pervasive narrative that that all these big organizations, the media, various government layers and strategies and stuff, they sort of push this narrative. And it's almost like a given. It's like, once you get into these corporates, this is the narrative that you must push. And I feel that this sort of leftist narrative, which is what's being pushed all over the place now, is very much the same, or similar sort of narrative that is pushed on the right now, the sort of standard conservative ink, what is dubbed as the right today. So your standard issue American sort of conservative. Now, when I say American conservative, I mean a conservative that views conservatism through a political lens. Like you mentioned earlier on, Dylan, the idea of we just need to buy into the Constitution a little bit more and use the Constitution in a more sort of conservative way, things will work out. And I think that the narrative being pushed by the left has sort of oozed its way into the right, and now conservatism, like you said, has conserved nothing, and it is pretty much the left. Okay. Now, this brings me to, what's his name? Robert Conquest, right? And his 3 laws of politics. I want to just sort of go through the 3 laws of politics, and then we can sort of discuss them. The first law is everyone is conservative about what he knows best. What are your thoughts on that, Dylan? you know my thoughts on it. But hang on, before you answer that, hello Ty. Well, good evening everybody. Where's Uncle tonight? Uncle is preoccupied, if you know what I mean. Johnny Pingo, what's going on there, brother? Welcome. Yeah, Dylan, what is your thoughts on that Robert Conquest story?
Well, okay, so if it depends on sort of, not to go all Jordan Peterson on you, but it depends what you mean by conservatism. So if you mean conservatism,
what do you mean by conservatism?
Really difficult concept. I'm very careful with my words here. So American conservatism, right? So if we mean conservatism in the American political sense, then obviously this quote doesn't make sense, right? So, and I think if you look at conservatism, if you want to call it that, across the West, it varies from country to country. For the simple reason, so like for instance, German conservatives are different than American conservatives and have different values. Russian conservatism is very different. It has an emphasis on a strong state that does things for the country where power is sort of centralized. That's always kind of been sort of how Russia does things. It's not a modern invention, but at the same time, it respects tradition. It supports the Orthodox Church, and it's not trying to be too intrusive and control everyone's lives. It's not a totalitarian state. It's a state that is interested in centralized power, and the czar sort of leads us. Is sort of how Russian conservatism goes. Very different than American conservatism. So conservatism to me is basically it's a posture. It's a mindset. It's not a policy prescription. And sort of the penultimate conservative in America in the 20th century was a guy named Russell Kirk. And he went at great pains to say that conservatism is non-ideological. So if we understand conservatism as a posture and non-ideological, it's mostly a mindset that people want to preserve what they have because they like it and because it's what they're comfortable with and it's what they're used to. So for instance, if I was to infiltrate a feminist book club and be like, okay, so I'm going to start using leftist deconstruction of the text, but I'm going to turn it back on them. And then I'm going to try and insert a patriarchal message into this feminist book club. They'd want to kick me out because the feminist book club that they built and that they're familiar with and that they're accustomed to is all about bashing the patriarchy and not exalting in the patriarchy. So that would obviously be a problem. So in a sense, they're conservative for what they have, what they've built. Now, obviously, these sorts of people, the sort of people you'd find in a feminist book club, are radicals and progressives and not what we would consider as conservative. They're interested in demonizing Western Christian society and replacing it with something more egalitarian and, frankly, absurd. So, but for the institutions that they do have and the ones that they do control, they're quite happy to have them stay as they are. And they see anything that is that potentially threatens that equilibrium as a threat. And so in a sense, you could call them conservative. So like when the Soviet Union collapsed, you had all these old bureaucrats and they didn't want to change and whatnot. And Boris Yeltsin's up there drunk yelling on top of a tank. And they could be sort of thought of as the conservatives of that particular time. So that's sort of what it means by conservatism. So it's a posture.
Yeah, so that comment by Robert Conquest, I agree with the statement. The statement is undeniable. I mean, everyone is going to try and save something that they want to save. So, Dennis, how's it, man? Welcome. Good to have you. So, everyone wants to conserve what they what they want, okay, whether it's their way of life or their family or whatever it is. Everyone wants to
Their
conserve
feminist book club.
yeah, or if it's their feminist book club or whatever it is. Everyone likes the idea of conserving something, because here's my idea of conservatism. I truly believe that anything, the moment it comes into existence, starts to deteriorate unless it is met with an opposing force of conservatism. So everything, the moment it starts to appear, starts on a pathway towards demise, I guess, if you want to really call it. That's a bit of a harsh word, but yeah, it starts to deteriorate unless it is met with an opposing force of conservatism. So saying something like everyone is conservative for things that they know, that's fine. That's perfectly normal. But I would argue that there are certain things that are inherently conservative or intrinsically conservative, and things that are degenerate. Okay, so things that so this is why you won't find a feminist book club identifying it's probably a word that gets dropped all the time in a feminist book club as well. Okay, you won't find these women in this feminist book club identifying as conservatives, because they understand that their logic and their way of thinking is actually not a conservative way of thinking. So now here's the thing. This might be a little bit controversial and stuff, but it really isn't, you know. I'm pretty sure that a lot of gay guys know this. Your lifestyle is not conservative, okay? It's not something that can be sustained or maintained or whatever it is, okay? Sure, you and your husband get married, whatever it is, but you cannot procreate, okay? It's not a conservative way of living, okay? Let's face it. You can't make your own offspring. Sure, you can, you know, adopt kids and that sort of thing, but you can't, it's not a inherently or an intrinsically conservative way of thinking. So that's my thought, is that you're not really conservative if the things that you're trying to conserve are not intrinsically conservative in nature. So that's just my sort of counter to Robert Conquest's first rule. Everyone is conservative about what he knows best. And yeah, you know, it could be, you could also make the argument that, hey, hang on a second, all you know is husband, wife, children. That's why you're conservative about that. But I'm like, no. Okay, well, I was created by a man and a woman, a husband and a wife, raised, and now I've got a wife and children. So that's kind of what conservatism is all about. It's about legacy, creation, all of these sort of things, maintaining that legacy. And that's what it's all about, in my mind. You can't take that away from conservatism. Then then it's not conservative. It's just wanting to save wanting to continue with your degeneracy. Kill me now.
Yeah. I guess the one thing I'll say to that is, if you look at what is passed for as conservative over time, it has a constant shift to the left. So basically, conservatives of today are basically Democrats from 20, 30 years ago. And I don't think that's by accident. I think that's largely because that's kind of how conservatism is. Because it is non-ideological, because it is kind of a mindset. It's able to be dragged, you know, by an actual ideology, basically, because conservatism, as I maintain, isn't an ideology. So it, yeah, if in a sort of Burkean sense, like, you know, Edmund Burke. What you're talking about is, you know, conservative. So it's basically, you know, temperance. Let's not get too hasty. Let's preserve the religion of the country, and so on and so forth. That is, you know, conservatism. But because it's not, an ideology in and of itself. It's basically gets pulled wherever the wind takes it, given enough time.
Yeah, but
so
I mean,
the thing I'll say is the conservative impulse is perfectly normal, and it's a right one. But I think in order for it to have any teeth, it actually has to be connected to something more than that, right? So you can be like being a conservative is like it's sort of like being imagine like a guy who's sort of old fashioned, maybe a little prickly, doesn't have exactly PC views and whatnot, but he's an agnostic or an atheist, right? So he has these ideas and whatnot, but he doesn't really have much of a moral justification for them, other than the fact that it's just kind of, his own, just sort of the way he is and sort of the way he was raised and whatnot. That's kind of how I see conservatism. He's the old, crotchety, or just prickly agnostic or atheist guy who has what might be thought of as relatively traditional social perceptions, but because he doesn't have it anchored in like faith or an explicit ideology, over the time that is inevitably going to shift to the left. So that's basically my shtick.
That basically brings you right to the second Robert Conquest law, which says any organization not explicitly right-wing sooner or later becomes left-wing, which is, this is the thing is we've said this so many times on this show, is that things like conservatism and these sort of things, like what Dylan said, if it's not anchored, okay, now we're a Christian group of guys, so we're going to say it has to be anchored in Christ. If it's not anchored in Christ, it's going to be dragged along by any other kind of hooked onto the left and pulled along. And that's where we have the situation where we're in now, where there's very sort of minimal and becoming less and less. The gap is closing more and more between the left and the right in our modern world. And Tienis made a good comment over here. He said, I don't know if it's Tienis, not Tienis, sorry. One should rather be reformative and we're back. You back there, Dylan? Sorry.
Yeah, I'm back. It's okay. Was that you? I thought it was me. I wasn't sure.
I think it was me. Sorry, man. That's sorry. I don't know what happened. I think my connection is the next one. So he says, Tennis, we did talk about this in the beginning. He says, I personally have a problem with the word reactionary. Etymologically, reactionary is in Marxist use, tending towards reversing existing tendencies. So no, I don't think that's, I don't know, maybe, I don't know, you want to respond to that? I don't quite understand the comment, but I think I don't agree with it.
Yeah, well, basically, like we were talking about in the beginning, this is, Tienis is right that it's a communist slur, essentially. So anything that is counter-revolutionary is reactionary. It's reacting against the revolution. It's standing in the way of progress. Therefore, it is reactionary. So, but like we were saying, it's sort of one of these words that people have just sort of people who are on the right, but not like conservatives sort of have begun to adopt as like, yeah, okay, whatever. Like I'm a reactionary. So they've taken the slur on for themselves.
You see, this
kind
is the thing is when
Is it working, Scott?
Yeah, it's like the same as when you own these words, the left has no power over you. So things like where Dylan's name, Mr. Patriarch, the left is always, eh? Sorry, Dylan, your connection's also a bit slow. There's a bit of a delay.
Okay. No, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, cool. It's a bit of a delay, but anyway.
Slow,
so anyway, let's move on from. Oh, is it my side? Oh, crap. There we go. Wait, hang on a sec. Hang on. Am I back now?
Yeah, you look a little better, I think.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, I think you look a little bit better. Okay, yeah, that's better. Good.
You'd think that a 100 meg line would be enough to stream on, and it's just anyway. So Tien said, sorry, I missed the start of the conversation. No worries, brother. No worries. So let's move on now. His third rule or third law of politics is the simplest way to explain the behavior of any bureaucratic organization is to assume that it is controlled by a cabal of its enemies. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And, essentially that's sort of what's happened, right? So there's what's called the long march through the institutions. So you have progressively more and more leftist infiltration of particularly universities, education, Hollywood, and so on and so forth. So whatever these things were set up originally, they're now basically controlled by people who are interested in turning the system on its head. So that's basically that last point.
Yeah. So, okay. So
which I think is, obviously true.
Yeah, definitely. Hang on. I want to get to this. We'll get to that article in just a second, Dylan, the one that you sent, where we can just sort of briefly go through it. But I think what people need to understand about what's going on in the world that we live in today, the sooner people understand this, the sooner they will be able to sort of understand the world around them. Now, people might listen to what I'm going to say now and think that I'm an absolute tinfoil hat whack job guy, but whatever. I really don't care. So the sooner people realize that what's going on today is not a left versus right. It's not a ideology versus this ideology. A certain ideology versus another ideology. It's got nothing to do with that. It is a spiritual battle. We are in and fighting and facing a spiritual battle. And the sooner people realize this, the better. The idea of politics and all of that sort of stuff is all smoke and mirrors, to hide the actual insidious idea out there that I don't know if I can mention this, but anyway, I'd rather make a video about it just to clarify what it is, so I don't sound like an absolute nutcase when I say these things. But there's the idea of I don't know how much you know about it, but the idea of and now we're going down a rabbit hole over here of solve et coagula. I don't know how much you know about that.
Nah, man, I'm Orthodox. I don't go for Latin. You know that. Go ahead.
The Greek would probably be, I don't know, solviucus et coagulus or something. But but I mean, if you had to hear the word solve et coagula, what would you think that those two words mean? So solve, what do you think it means?
Solve.
Yeah.
Like a solve, like something you put on to heal a wound, like a salve. I don't know.
No.
Or the
Solve.
soul.
No. Solve, dissolve. Solve, dissolve.
I don't know, man. Oh, dissolve. Okay, yeah. There we go. Dissolve, yes. And coagulate is like what a scab does.
Yeah. So basically, what solve et coagula is, it's it's born out of the alchemists, that basically their idea was to take base metals and convert it into gold. So to take something that was completely worthless and convert it into something worth something. Okay, directly linked to wealth, though. So the solve et coagula idea stems directly from that. It's also linked to the philosopher's stone. You've heard of the philosopher's stone, Mr. Patriarch?
Yeah, I've heard of the philosopher's stone. Yeah.
So the philosopher's stone is essentially the philosophy behind it. So I'm gonna get to a point here. Hang on. So the idea of solve et coagula is to dissolve and to reform, change the form, dissolve it down to its base elements, and reform it into something of use. Okay, so the philosophy behind it, the philosophy behind the philosopher's stone, is to be able to convert will or spirit into, destroy the will or destroy the spirit, and to convert it into something else. Okay, if that's not something that is plainly observable in our daily life everywhere around us, I mean, that is cultural Marxism, is taking something that is formed, breaking it down, and converting it into something else. Okay, the new normal, all of these ideas, that is cultural Marxism. And the idea of solve
is the thing now.
What's that?
I was just saying, yeah, Juneteenth is a thing now. So yeah, it's solve et coagula. It's basically it's alchemy on a social, society-wide level. It's social alchemy.
It's exactly that, and it's
cultural Marxism. It's social alchemy.
It's exactly that. It is social alchemy, and it's exactly that. And I, a lot of people will call me a madman and stuff for saying these things, but I watched a video about solve et coagula, and it wasn't a Christian video or anything. It was some sort of like spiritual guru guy explaining the concept of it, and it just screamed cultural Marxism to me. I was like, what? This is cultural Marxism.
Cultural Marxism.
Yeah, and it just dawned on me that this was so real.
Nothing new under the sun. Mm-hmm.
You see,
it's that old proverb: "Nothing new under the sun."
Yeah, you see, now that's very, very true, because this also lends itself to the. I don't believe. I don't now. Everyone says, the French Revolution was the worst thing that ever happened in our world, okay, in the modern days, okay? And yes, it was definitely one of the worst things. But I believe it started before that. I believe the Enlightenment led to the French Revolution, obviously, that goes without saying. But I believe it all started long before that. This is a spiritual battle and a spiritual war that's been going on for millennia. And it's now sort of, I don't know. I don't want to sound like an end of world type of oak and stuff, which I'm not.
Culminating.
Yeah. I don't think it's culminating more than it ever has. That's what I'm saying. I don't think it is culminating now more than it ever has. I just think that it's becoming more and more difficult to hide because of the scope and the scale of people's understanding of the world or the potential for it. So I think that I don't think that it is any worse now than it always has been, but I think that it is sort of becoming more and more obvious now. It's a little bit more difficult to hide now than it was in the past.
Yeah, it's if you're a radical and your revolution began, in earnest in the United States in the early 1900s, that's a lot of time between then and now. And now you have more tools at your disposal. So as you more and more radicalism, things are going to get weirder and weirder over time. That's just sort of the nature of this process, I think. And so yeah, it's to the point. And the thing is, if you actually listen to like proper Marxists, a lot of them were and this is the crazy thing, a lot of them were what we would consider conservative socially today, right? So they'll be one of my favorite examples of this is that the Communist Party in Russia, which still exists, tabled a legislation to basically try and penalize. And I don't think it was outright criminalize, but penalize homosexuality, because in their worldview, that's a sign of bourgeois decadence. This is classic Marxist thinking. They're like, yeah, homosexuality is a sign of bourgeois decadence, and as such, it's depriving the nation of its workers, and it's indulging in the self. Therefore, it is, a social ill, and should be gotten rid of. Is basically sort of the classical Marxist conception of this thing, and this was very normal thinking right up in amongst Marxists, like right up until the 80s, basically. So yeah, now it's the revolution has gone beyond the material of trying to equalize everything materially to it's just rabid cultural alchemy, like we were talking about. So yeah, that's the thing. And yeah, I think it is definitely a spiritual thing. And as much as they may poo-poo religion in the public, I think a lot of the elites are kind of aware of this sort of thing. And not to get too conspiratorial, but but people do meet at Bohemian Grove and do things. So
yeah. So there is a lot of sort of dodgy stuff going on. I just want to jump into the comments over here in a second. Yaku Myberg, how's it going? Only tuned in now, but let's go. Cool. Hope you're enjoying the based reactionary content. Yeah, our government calls it transformation. Yes, Pa, how's it? I like the Rhodesian flag on the the profile picture. Hey, look who joined us. It's Jason Batt. How's it, bro? Good to see you. So he says, yes, the new norm is now, new society is the new norm. Yeah, that's basically cultural alchemy. That's what cultural Marxism is. It's alchemy. So, and there's a lot of dodgy connections with alchemy and stuff. The Freemasons and stuff were very, very deeply involved in alchemy as well. A lot of that stuff. Now, a lot of people, there's a lot of shady things about the Freemasons. Now, I'm a Catholic, so we don't really like the Freemasons. I'm sure the the Eastern Orthodox are also pretty anti-Freemasons, right, Dylan?
Yeah. Yeah, but Masonry never really made it to the East. But where they did encounter it, yeah, they're pretty quick to condemn it.
Yeah, and the actually, funny enough, the Freemasons, the early Freemasons and stuff, were very much involved in alchemy and very much involved in Solve et Coagula. And here's a thing: we've all heard of Baphomet, right? You know, Baphomet is Dylan.
Oh, Baphomet, yeah.
Yeah, Baphomet, the law officers of Baphomet. And remember that one that we made, eh? That was classic. Remember that episode?
Yeah. The Better Call Saul one.
Yeah, that was classic. Okay, so I want to show you something here quickly. I want to show you. I just need to get a good picture over here of old Baphomet, the demon. Let me just.
That's the goat-headed one, right? With like the boobs.
Yeah, he's got boobs. He has goat horns. He has a pentagram on his cup, and he has like a flame coming from his cup as well. And he's a real twist, this Baphomet. Okay, hang on. Let me find it. Is it going to open here? No. Okay. Hang on. Let me do this here quickly. I want to show you something here, Dylan.
Now it's funny. While you're digging that up, just going on. Well, while you're digging that up to fill airtime, as I understand it with Baphomet. Oh, here we go. Is I always think about it. Speaking of alchemy, Baphomet itself is sort of an alchemical entity, right? So it's neither human nor bestial. You know, got it. And I think that's kind of the whole point with it.
You got it. You've got it 100%. Okay, so look here. Oh, what is that on his arms? Solve Coagula. You see? You see that?
Now we're gonna. Yeah, I do, but I'm just worried now. Now we're going to get our channel banned for pornography violations.
Yeah. Zooming into Baphomet.
I'm just joking.
Baphomet's gross boobs. Gross.
But yeah, no, that's just the thing. It's neither male nor female, human nor animal, demon and angel at the same time. So it's and you know, that's kind of, and you see a lot of that sort of thing, you know, advocated for in modern society, like with the what do you call it, the like otherkins, right? You call otherkins an alchemical Solve et Coagula phenomenon. So I'm neither human nor animal. I'm both. Or the what do you? I can't think of. There's
another one
of these ridiculous.
These weird furries and people that identify as babies and all these things. Yeah,
right.
tennis, moobs. Yeah, moobs, definitely moobs. But anyway, but you see that everywhere, and this is social alchemy. But anyway, back to conservatism versus reactionary thought. Now, I do believe that if you want to be a reactionary, you have to be. It has to stem. You can Let me think about how I'm going to say this. You can read yourself into becoming a reactionary or into reactionary thought. So you can intellectualize yourself into thinking like a reactionary. But I think that what's going to happen then is you're just going to sort of take ideologies that you know, and you're just going to sort of piece them together, and it's just going to end up like our friend Curtis Yarvin, old Mencius Moldbug, who believes in yeah, who believes in corporate monarchy, and I mean, this is just, yeah. I'm sorry, Dylan. I just can't. Basically, what he's done is he's tried to sort of modernize monarchy, which is a bit bizarre, right? I mean, what is your thinking of, or your understanding of his idea of the sort of corporate or the CEO monarchy that he likes to talk about?
Well, I think mostly that is just sort of an analogy, and the the thing about it is that he's a big fan of something called sort of formalism, is what he terms it. And formalism is basically the idea that power is formally held in actuality by somebody else. So part of the problem where we have now, and this is something I've been working on in my fascist video. Part of the problem that a lot of reactionary people see with parliamentary systems and whatnot is it'll de jure hold the power, right? So on paper, we're the lawmaking body and so on and so forth. But they're very happy to abdicate certain responsibilities and authority either to the executive branch, to non-elected bureaucratic departments, and are heavily influenced also by, corporations and so on and so forth. So that power, even if you do replace, elect somebody else, the power isn't really held there as much as you might think it is. It's sort of dispersed. And because it's dispersed and you can't exactly point to the person and say, hey, you're in charge, fix this, or you're in charge, get out of here, and we're going to replace you. It's kind of a devilish circumstance. And you're sort of stuck in this gridlock. So formalism is the idea that, like with a king, like an absolute monarch, essentially, everybody knows that if, shit hits the fan, they can blame the monarch. Or if things are going good, they can praise the monarch. Or they want something to change, they can petition the monarch. And that's sort of the idea of formalism. And the benefit of that, of course, is that there's transparency to a degree that you actually don't have with the system as it now exists. Paradoxically, you think you would, but you don't. And the idea with, this neo-cameralism, as it's called, or is basically just sort of an updated version of a monarchy. So you would basically have, a king in effect, basically appointed by elites, and this can vary. You could have like a, sort of a restricted franchise, and you sort of vote on the king, and then he's president for life, and then is able to be subject to recalled, like a CEO, just as an analogy. So the CEO thing, I think, is more of an analogy than an actual, reality. He doesn't want to make the ghost of Steve Jobs, president of the United States or anything.
But wouldn't the motivation behind that sort of thing, Dylan, be profit rather than anything else?
What are you talking about? The motivation for formal, like a.
So let's say, for example, so Malberg's idea of, businesses and corporates basically becoming the monarchy, and those elites becoming the monarchy. Wouldn't the motivation behind that be strictly profit?
I think the thing is that, like I was saying, the CEO thing is an analogy more than what he'd actually like to see in effect. And I'm mostly interested in Malberg for the metapolitical analysis, but as far as his advocated political system, he seems to be in favor of something which much more approaches a monarchy than, something that we have now today.
Cool. So he'd be open to God ordained monarchy then, right? Okay, cool. Lekker.
Yeah. No, totally.
Well, I mean, I don't think he's a Christian. definitely not a Christian by the way that he talks. But anyway.
No, he's not, but he's not an anti-theist either. He's one of these guys who's like, I just struggle with faith. I was raised by atheist parents, and I don't believe myself, but I totally see the value of spirituality in society, and we've needed a state religion for a long time, and it should be like Christianity essentially. So even though he's not like not on board personally, he's not against the institution of religion in broader society at all. So he's actually pro-religion, but he just can't believe himself.
So all those guys, those kind of thinkers, because there's a lot of them out there that are good thinkers, that are intelligent guys, that are coming up with all this amazing thought and all that sort of thing. The common thing is, I understand, but my faith is weak. Like that's common. That's very, very common. And my advice to you would be, get your ass to a church, accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, get baptized, and then you're all.
Of course.
Then you start on your pathway. I mean, that's how it all starts. Get that done, and you'll see your life will change, and everything will just start making sense. So that's my advice to those thinkers. Stop this. I think it is that a lot of people, a lot of folks,
you make it.
Hey? What's that, Dylan?
Just saying, fake it till you make it.
No, don't fake it. Don't have a don't have a false conversion though. Don't be like them Jews and Muslims during the what is it, the Inquisitions. Oh geez, this video is not going to last very long on YouTube now.
Fingers crossed.
Damn. So anyway, don't be like that, but go to church. Go and ask. Go if you want to go to whatever church you want to go. Go speak to people, fellowship with other Christians, ask them questions, find out about it. Sure, it's difficult to be a Christian. Sure, there's a lot of changes that you'll have to make in your life, but it's all for the good. I have friends of mine that Jake Yaku, we do not need a state religion. Yeah.
Well, that's what you think, Yako.
That's what you think, Yako. This channel is called Reactionary Opinions. So yeah,
you already have a state religion. It's called transformation.
Yeah. It's called the African National Congress. It's called constitutionalism. It's a state religion. It's already there. I mean, why not have Christianity as your state religion?
And that's the thing. And I guess this is kind of the a difference between sort of, and again, this is why this term's slippery. So conservatives traditionally were actually in favor of state religions or state supported religions, right? So for instance, like Italy or Spain is a Catholic country, or it was historically a Catholic country, formally speaking. And, even though they didn't control the Pope, they were interested in advocating for and supporting Catholicism in their kingdom, right? So if you look at a country today, which is a liberal country, which has a separation of church and state, what you find is that in the vacuum, you substitute one religion for another. So in South Africa, the religion is literally transformation and, the struggle and, the national democratic revolution to some degree, and egalitarianism. And in America, you have replaced Christianity for progressivism and equality and civil rights. The new religion in America is civil rights. I mean, pure and simple. And that's just sort of the thing that pushes the civilization forward or backward, depending on how you see it. But yeah, I mean,
So
you can't get away from state religion. It's going to be there.
yeah, the one thing that people need to understand, and this is like okay, humans are inherently religious. How do you prove that? Well, I mean, by everything around us. Democracy is a religion. Um, Constitutionalism is a religion. Media is a religion. All of these things are religious. Even waking up in the morning and brushing your teeth at 8 o'clock in the morning is a religion. It's a religious act. Okay. These are all things that we do that are routine and organized. Okay. So humans are intrinsically and inherently religious. Okay. So you need some sort of religion and that sort of thing in your life. It's up to you to choose which one is better or not. So as a 6-point Calvinist, would I be welcome in the Catholic RSA? No, you see now you okay. I think what Yaku might have meant was by we don't need a state religion is maybe he meant we don't need a state church. Big difference. Big difference. You see, the separation of state and church, the separation of church and state was not the removal of religion from the government at all. It was merely the removal of a state church. Okay, so yeah, that's what basically what we're saying over there, Yaku, is that no one church holds power over the government. Does that make sense?
No one government holds power over the church, rather.
Yeah.
That's the other angle to this.
Exactly.
But again, like all this is a little fuzzy to me, because if you look at, for instance, all the mainline Protestant denominations in the United States are in decline, and they're in decline for a whole host of reasons. And one of them is that, yeah, they're not state religions. I mean, we have a long history of separation between church and state and society. Yet, nevertheless, these institutions are compromised. They're losing membership in droves, and people are turning to more traditional forms of Christianity across the United States, aside from evangelicals. And evangelicals are, it's primitive in a certain way. So they don't really have a doctrine, but they're like, I believe the Bible, and the Bible says this, therefore I'm against it, or I'm for this or against that. So I think it's not so clear to me that if you look at the course of history, that having the state and church kind of united to a certain degree always ends in bad things. So if you look at the history of Christianity throughout the world, what would usually happen is that the elite in that country would begin to convert, and then the monarch would convert. And then once the monarch converts, then the religion is spread to the people. And then that sort of becomes the faith. And yes, the monarch has influence over the bishops and so forth, but he doesn't have influence over the whole thing. So in Catholicism, you had the papacy. So the Bishop of Rome was sort of apart from some of this stuff. And in Eastern Orthodoxy, you would have patriarchs and bishops, but they would, yeah, of course, individual ones could be compromised, but you couldn't compromise all of them because there was no like single power source, right? So, and with some other denominations, I mean, today you see a much more sort of decentralized approach, and that is sort of good, and sort of insofar as it's a way to sort of preserve the key aspects of Christianity, while these larger mainline Protestant denominations are sort of crumbling around us. So in that sense, yeah, it's good to sort of separate off from these formerly state churches, like the state church of Sweden is, I believe, Lutheran, conventionally Lutheran, and yeah, it's a mess. Same with the Anglicans, it's a mess. But on the other hand, if you look at Russia, which has a very cozy relationship between church and state, it's quite conservative, as we would think of it. It's actually kind of anti-modern in some senses. So I don't think this union is necessarily always a bad thing. That's all I say. I'm not totally sold one way or the other, but I certainly wouldn't want to see a system where the faith is compromised, or a system where other Christians are rounded up and sent back to the Netherlands because they're part of the wrong denomination, for example.
No, definitely not. The thing is the way I said, and we've spoken about it again many times on this show, about how the family unit is the smallest, is basically the initial building cells of society, of a community. And within that family cell, I mean, in my family, Christ is the leader of the house. It's Christ, then it's me, then it's my wife. That's how it works. So why wouldn't you want that kind of structure in your broader community, and then by extension outwards towards your broader society? Why wouldn't you want that? I mean, as a Christian, I don't see why you wouldn't want that. Perhaps you're struggling with being a liberal Christian, or a libertarian Christian, which is impossible. You can't be a libertarian Christian. I'm sorry to all those libertarian Christians that might be listening. It's impossible. I'm sorry.
I think
I've become
can.
more and more.
I just think you're deluded. Because
sure. You can be whatever you want to be. You can be whatever you want to be, but you can't can't be an honest Christian and be a libertarian. I'm sorry, guys. Come on. Do what thou wilt, Satanism. Okay. So you can't be a Christian libertarian. It doesn't exist. Anyway, so I believe that Christianity should be the backbone of everything conservative, and should be the backbone of society. Remove that, and your ideology or your way of thinking gets pulled by any kind of ideology either way, because it has no anchor. And I like this, because this is going back to it's bringing back so many memories. I don't know about you, Dylan, from when we first started this over a year ago, when we'd have these chats and stuff. And I'm so glad that a year down the line, and I still feel pretty much exactly the same. So yeah,
I'm just more radical than ever. That's my problem. But yeah, no, I totally agree. That's the thing, and to sort of tie us all back to sort of conservatism and whatnot. Conservatism is fine and normal. Every society does it. Like I said, it's a posture, and it's a healthy posture. It's that old idea, what was that G.K. Chesterton quote? So if you see if you come upon a fence, think twice before you tear it down, because you don't know why it was put there in the first place. And it may well serve a purpose. And that's basically the heart and soul of conservatism right there. Social conservatism. But like I said, conservatism is fine and normal, but it has to be anchored to something that actually steers it. So you need to have an ethos that a telos, something that also sort of propels your society and gives it meaning, apart from just hey, let's be careful, pragmatism, essentially. So, and obviously, in my opinion, that should be a Christian perspective on the world. I'm not a universalist in the sense of political structures. I mean, so like Ethiopia was a Christian country, while my ancestors were tree worshiping pagans. I mean, that's how old Christianity is in Ethiopia. And the particular government and structure of Ethiopia, I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem if they do their own sort of thing. So if they want to have a monarchy and sort of a semi-feudalist society, which they had up until the Derg took over and destroyed everything, no, that's fine. That's fine. So long as that society is based on, Christian principles, that's okay. So you can have variety across different nations, and that's perfectly fine. I'm just interested in the West and, countries at more countries as Christianity spreads itself to sort of base what it is they're doing on eternal principles rather than temporal ones.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, you hit the nail right on the head there. So Tennis made a comment over here. Tennis, sorry, I keep saying your name, Tennis, sorry. He says in 1804, the government under J.A. de Mist, a Freemason, wanted to make the church in South Africa a department of the state. Needless to say, that didn't end well. Again, like I told you, you can't have the church or a specific church part of the state. I particularly don't believe in that. Maybe you could, but again, it's, I don't know, it's been twisted. The whole narrative. Anyway, Dagabreker.
Especially by
yeah, you wouldn't really want. I wouldn't really trust a Freemason to. So basically, a Satanist wanted to make. Yeah, so basically, a Satanist wanted to make the church in South Africa a department of the state. Yeah, that's going to end well. So anyway, not Dagbreker says we are at the level of insanity where 2 plus 2 equals 5. Yes, Dagbreker. Nice of you to join us. We spoke about this earlier on. Rewatch the video where we talk about social alchemy. This is a good one, Dylan. I think we came up with quite a cool
coined a new term. Social
alchemy. I like that. I like that idea. So, Dagbreker, in case you've just joined us, we spoke about the idea of solve et coagula, which is a alchemic idea. And this is why we are experiencing this level of insanity. Anyway, are we ready to cut it off there, Dylan, or anything else you want to add?
I'm ready to go. I'm just kind of low energy, but it was a good. I'm feeling kind of low energy, but I had a good talk with you nonetheless. And yeah, man, it was a great time talking as ever. And hopefully, despite this, all talks of alchemy and conservatism throughout history and different. Man, we covered a broad spade of topics tonight, but hopefully our listeners got something out of it and have a better understanding of our views on conservatism and how reactionary thinking is different in kind, but also not entirely separate from it.
Yeah, it's been a really, really interesting chat. This is basically what our channel is all about. We talk about these things. Like I said in the beginning of the video, that we sort of drifted away and started talking about more sort of current affairs, political ideas, and that sort of thing. And that's not really, it doesn't really interest us because myself and Dylan and Russell are all devout Christians, and what we've decided is the best way to defeat everything that's going on is to buckle down, pray, surrender to Christ, raise a good family, and teach your children well. And that is how we win this war, guys. That is how we defeat this this social alchemy. that's going on around there, and that's how we beat this thing. Raise a good family.
Go back to what we are, what we're made to do. Yep.
Yeah.
Deny the alchemy. Accept the base metal that you are. Don't try to be gold.
Exactly. Don't try to be gold, guys, because what
There's
we
nothing
are
wrong
is yeah. There's nothing wrong with being a base metal. God made us that way, so enjoy it.
Or should I say a based metal?
Hey, there we go. I'm drinking my contraband wine over here that I bought.
Tremendous.
Yeah. Anyway, that's it. It feels so sad to let everyone go, but thank you so much for watching, guys. Dagbreker says, excellent term, social alchemy. Do you subscribe to Renaissance Man? I don't
Sounds cool.
know.
I'll have to check it out.
I'd like to check him out. Yeah, Renaissance Man. There's quite a few guys that myself and Dylan watch on YouTube. My favorite is a guy by the name of Endeavor. Dylan's is what's that Asian guy? Come on, Dylan, what's his name? Settler's Lament.
Oh no, the Asian guy was well, there's a few there's a lot of channels I like, but there's this one I came across. It was called The Asian Capitalists, but then it became called A Dormant Dynasty, and it was basically a Chinese guy, a Chinese Canadian, who was basically went through the same trek I did, where he's like, yeah, all gung-ho for libertarianism and whatnot, and then he sort of became more and more reactionary as time went on. So yeah, A Dormant Dynasty is good. Endeavor's good. Settler's Lament, which Scott also mentioned, is good. If he sounds like a nerd and whatnot, but his content's great. And Academic Agent, also top notch. Academic Agent. Everyone should check him out. And The Distributist, if you're Catholic. I'm not, but he's still great.
Yeah, The Distributist. Yeah, I watch him. And then another one is Charlemagne as well. He's pretty cool. So yeah, there's a lot of those guys out there. The very unfortunate thing, guys, is that these are guys that the YouTube reactionary sphere is very much full of very smart, intellectualized guys that have intellectualized themselves into reactionary thought. I basically got clapped into reactionary thought. The world is quite a cuck place, and it clapped me right, to start thinking as a proper Christian and stuff. And that's why I have reactionary thought. But a lot of the guys in these things, they are sort of, and Dylan's going to hate me for saying this, but they're very dweeby, very nerdy guys and stuff, but they mean well.
It's true.
But
yeah, they are.
What they should be doing, what they should honestly be doing, is going to the gym, lifting some weights, going out there and finding a good Christian woman and getting married and having plenty of children. Spread the high IQ. That's what they should be doing. Yes. Instead of spending their time on the darker areas of YouTube. But they should really go and visit those guys. Yanni, how's it, man? Yanni, good to see you, man. Sorry, Yanni, you're coming right in the tail end of the chat. We're basically done, but thanks for joining anyway. Dagbreker says Renaissance Man is also Catholic. Must be a good, smart guy. Anyway, that is correct, Ty. It is a wrap. We're off here. And Tina says based metal. Never heard of that genre.
Dude, it should become a new genre. Just like right-wing metal. Just call it based metal.
Based metal. It's a good one.
They got metal. They got pirate metal. Why not based metal?
Based metal, yeah. Myself and Dylan will start a band, and we'll do that. I got the drumsticks over here. We'll go and we'll start a band.
There we go. Toxic masculinity, founders of based metal. There we go.
Anyway, thank you so much for listening to all our listeners out there. I hope that this channel didn't trigger people too much, and I hope that I don't go and check our subs and we're like -2 or 3 subs because people didn't enjoy it or whatever. But if you guys enjoyed the show, share it, tell people what we're talking about, and thank you so much for listening, guys. Remember to stay reactionary out there because
God wills it.
God wills